Fortress on a Hill with Henry, Danny, Kagan, Jovanni, Shiloh, and Monisha.
Welcome, everyone, to Fortress on the Hill, a podcast about U.S. foreign policy, anti-imperialism, skepticism, and the American way of war. I'm Jovanni. Thank you for being with us today. With me are my two co-hosts, Monisha and Shiloh. How are you guys doing today?
Hey, Jovanni. I'm doing well. It's good to see you.
Yeah, same here. It's good to see both of you.
Yep. Today we reflect on 2023, the political dynamics that happened, the continuation of the endless wars, the shift in geopolitics, and anything else that comes to mind. As we reflect, I look forward to the new year. We do so with the knowledge that a great crime is being committed against the people of Palestine while the world watches and feels powerless to do anything about it. Guys, let's each mention 3 or 4 things that impacted us or impacted you and or you were focusing on 2023, and 3 things or 4 things that you forecast for 2024 or that you look forward to in 2024. How does that sound?
Sounds golden.
I think I'll be kind of brief, but just crawling to the end of 2023 here. The three things I'm going to mention are kind of gonna build into sincerity, but the first one is like uh George Santos being expelled from Congress. That was impactful. One, because it just showed the like circus that is the US Congress and just how easy it is to even down to his name. And somehow he still like got voted in and was making laws that impact everyone. So that yeah, it was lighthearted in ways and then the also heavy in that like this clown, this queen of a person was actually making moves that impact people and yeah. And then the second thing for 2023 um was just kind of a little bit of frustration around the supposed justice system that we have, like not being able to so far some states are starting to, but not being able to block Trump from running and being the front runner, which will go into the forecasting for 2024. I think more and more, like, yeah, just feeling kind of um, powerless against the machine that is U.S. politics. Um, and then, yeah, what we're all kind of the sadness that we're all swimming in, I think right now is just the genocide and ethnic cleansing of our siblings in Palestine. I have dear friends that are Palestinian, dear friends that are anti-Zionist Jews, and just yes, heaviness all around. And again, just feeling powerless. That my money is going into this harm and this violence, my my tax money and all of that. Mm. Yeah, I think it is a shift that, the world's eyes are being open. I know a lot of places and a lot of people were already eyes wide open to US imperialism. Um, but I think the Western world in particular is becoming more aware and seeing this just right in our faces on our phones. It's hard to ignore the impacts that the US has around the world. Those are the 3 things. Oh, I guess I could get into one event that really impacted me, just last month. Myself and a large group of, anti-imperialist, anti-militarist veterans, made a trip out to Washington, DC, to speak out against the genocide in Gaza and to call for a ceasefire. And we got to meet with the like actual legit lawmakers who actually give a shit about people. It's a very small handful of them. But we got to meet with um Rashida Tlaib, and she just we shared just one of the best hugs I've ever experienced in my life, and it was just really impactful. Sharing my story with her and her sharing a bit of herself with us was something that, yeah, that I keep with me. So those are those are the three quick things that I'm thinking
You
about.
guys, did you guys occupy a congressional office as well?
We did, yeah. We went to Senator after meeting with Representative Tlaib and some others. Senator Gillibrand's office. She's a senator from New York who's very much tied to APAC and Israeli funding. And this was the day before they all left for Veterans Day weekend. And there's about 15 veterans in her office. And she refused to meet with us, refused to even have a phone call with us. And her staff was less than kind and just not trying to hear anything we wanted to say. We occupied her office for a few hours. A good handful of us were arrested. Just trying to get a phone call with her. And oh, what's that clown's name from Pennsylvania came out mocking us, waving an Israeli flag and just laughing as we were being arrested and just showing his ass to everyone. Um, yeah. And then the next day, it's just like such a such a slap in the face to see Senator Gillibrand's social media the next day, just like shaking hands and being all chummy with a bunch of veterans because it was the day before Veterans Day. But yeah, couldn't be bothered.
That's a big, tall. Was he a senator, congressman?
Yeah, he's a senator from Pennsylvania, and I'll look up.
He walks around with like a hoodie and everything. He's supposed to be like
Yeah.
a workers man person or whatever.
He's supposed to be a man of the people, and
Yeah.
that's what he ran on as a Democrat. But he's actually the largest recipient of J Street, which is a shell company for APAC.
John Fetterman.
John Fetterman, thank you.
Yeah.
You don't want to talk to us.
So, what are the things that you're looking forward to in 2024?
Oh, the things I'm looking forward to in 2024. A few things. Yeah. I don't know if looking forward to is the right word. I guess anxiously awaiting this whole election season and the shitstorm that's going to be. Is Trump going to be able to run? I don't know. We don't really know yet. He can't run in Colorado apparently, or he's not going to be on the ballot at least. Are the Democrats really going to put up Joe Biden, who's older than the state of Israel? I don't know. Like that's something to see. I think it's just gonna be the biggest shitstorm we've ever seen as far as an election year goes. Uh, Something else I guess I am looking forward to is just the movement that the BDS movement is making. I think people are starting to see like that individual, like consumer boycotts and divestments and sanctions really do hold power. Um, and yeah, that movement's getting a lot of traction when a lot of people would kind of write them off beforehand. And then another thing I'm looking forward to is just we're seeing the veil like kind of ripped off as it was being like slowly pulled back, but now it's being ripped off on US imperialism. And that is exciting and terrifying, I think, at the same time. Lots of world shifts happening, and yeah, I feel like it's just a snowball right now. We're snow plowing through to 2024 right now.
On that BDS, it's also not only Israeli products that people are boycotting, but also American products. I mean, you saw that they hit um, with the coffee place, Starbucks. Yeah, Starbucks took a big hit globally for their support of Israel, and I believe McDonald's as well. I believe they're closing big. They closed Starbucks or McDonald's restaurants in Malaysia and in other countries because of the financial hit that they were getting. Because people don't realize that although they're private companies, right? Uh, but they represent the U.S. overseas. So when you're overseas, you go to Starbucks, you're going. And the United States is a brand. America is a brand overseas, and people uh, it promotes itself as a brand, and people think of the United States as jeans and hip hop, and that's why particularly young people, when they think about United States, that's what they think about. Uh, Pop culture, pop music, shoes, Starbucks, McDonald's, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So getting that, so those become symbolism of the United States. So uh, because of the US support, those companies are also getting hit, as a way for people to pretty much, show their support or their anger of what's happening.
If only we could boycott the weapons companies, but we're not the ones using them. So we can't really boycott that. Yeah. Yeah, lots of movement in the BDS movement. Uh Lots of gains being made there. And just like, yeah, it's just like with social media and whatnot, you can like really quickly get some momentum going. Like as soon as yes, a company gets shown to be a supporter of Israel or the US, like you're saying, it just gets shut down by the people real quick. So that's really exciting to come into our power as people and to see like that we do actually through consumerism, but we do actually have power in some ways. I think that's always important to have examples of.
There's some really important things, Shiloh, that you touched on, particularly around the veil being lifted, um, and the topic of elections. So yeah, those are things that I'm definitely looking forward to talking to about, but also talking to, because those are things that um, we're all going to be facing the impacts of. Great synopsis, great analysis accompanying your I don't even want to call them highlights because
The lowlights.
yeah, exactly. It, yeah, it's but I really appreciate too how you still have some hopefulness about things that can happen. The potential that exists in what's happening right now, and I think that that's really important.
Yeah, it's really important. If you don't have hope, you don't have anything. Like hope is an action, the discipline, and it's really hard to hold on to those threads sometimes. But if you don't have hope, you don't have anything at that point.
Yeah, and I like also how you're not approaching hope in a bypassing way. Where I think not to be judgmental of folks because we never know where people are. Um, but I think especially now with what's happening, we see a lot of folks sticking their head in the sand, and needing to maintain like some toxic positivity. I just want peace, and all that without participating in the creation of that, making sacrifices to create peace, and whatnot. Like even beyond boycotts, even in their social circles, speaking out, actually confronting reality. Um, so yeah, I think the other, I guess that's something else that I gather from what you've shared is the need to balance that hope with action. To not use like the whole idea of spiritual bypassing of all of that comes with wanting to achieve peace. Sometimes people use it as a way of avoiding, but there's no point to me. There's no point in holding on to hope if we are not doing the thing that creates what we're hoping for. Yeah. Okay. That's my spiel.
Absolutely. Thank you, Monisha. Want to go?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. So 2023 for me, obviously being here in Puerto Rico, I'm really paying more attention to what's happening here. Um, the continuation of the fiscal control board's undermining of human rights in Puerto Rico via the austerity measures that are being implemented via the interventionism, um, politically, economically, through the economic dictatorship that we're under through them. A lot of what people have seen happening in Ukraine because of the Natalie Jaresko was imposed as the finance minister after the coup, and brought all of the austerity measures, really hurt the people, the working people of Ukraine, part of the puppet government. And we have a similar thing. She actually was assigned to be the head of the fiscal control board here in Puerto Rico for a period of time until recently. I think it was after the violence in Ukraine began was when her term ended. But implementing basically the same things to strangle the people here, privatizing everything, all of everything that should be public, that should be accessible to everyone, the basic needs and human rights that we have, privatizing all of it in the name of paying off the illegal debt that the people of Puerto Rico did not have a say in the criminal government and the bondholders and the investors and everybody else created. We had no part in that, but we're the ones suffering from that. Um, so that's been a big deal in 2023 here in Puerto Rico, the collapse of our healthcare system, the collapse of our education system, pretty much the politicians that are there now, even regardless of their stance on status, are for the most part um, for privatization, for all of these things because they're benefiting from it. There's a lot of corruption. The Independence Party, not as much, but there's still, no political entity is perfect, regardless of the aspiration that they hold. Um, so yeah, there's that. We're still a colony. The Status Act, another version of the Status Act, came out, and it's currently, I think, I haven't checked in a couple of days on what the status of the Status Act is. I believe it passed the House and was in the Senate. Recently, a group called New York Boricua Resistance did a webinar on it, and I discussed it as we critically analyzed it as an element of hybrid warfare, lawfare, political warfare, psychological warfare. We talked about economic warfare a little bit involved with that, but so that's the conversation around Puerto Rico's status gets passed around. Usually doesn't move. The difference between this piece of legislation, proposed legislation, and ones in the past is it's supposed to make the next plebiscite that we have over status binding. The ones, all of them leading up to this point have been non-binding, which basically just means that for anybody who's not familiar with how the supposed so-called process of decolonization of Puerto Rico goes with the United States, there is a pretty much rigged vote that takes place every so often where the people of Puerto Rico, and I'm saying this with air quotes and a lot of sarcasm, the people of Puerto Rico vote on whether or not they want to either join the United States as a state, stay as a colony, which according to the failure of the UN, they consider us conveniently to be a self-governing territory, which is a complete lie, or to become an independent sovereign nation, which terrifies the U.S. empire for some reason. The Status Act demands, in a sense, that the next plebiscite vote is binding because Congress doesn't have to listen to what we say. Congress ultimately, at the end of the day, makes the decision on what happens with Puerto Rico, regardless of how any type of voting process takes place here in Puerto Rico. So, to me, I personally don't have a whole lot of faith in this process. I don't trust the United States, and no one should on the planet. We see how they have consistently disregarded treaties. We see how they're behaving now. We see how they've behaved since their inception. Um, so yeah, but that's what's happening. So there's going to be some conversation about that in the U.S. Voters most likely will not be exposed to a lot of those conversations. They won't be aware of what's happening. Supposedly, there is supposed to be greater oversight over the voter education process, which is supposed to more effectively educate potential voters in Puerto Rico about the various status options, what are the implications of these options, and what are the processes involved in if any of them were voted on. For example, Puerto Ricans, if the Puerto Ricans who chose to participate in the plebiscite vote voted in favor majority for independence, then there has to be an entire plan. They have to be educated on that beforehand, and the same with statehood and etc. So there's that. Um, The third thing, obviously, is Palestine. Um, and through this process, I've been kind of peripherally involved in the BDS movement since um, right after COVID started. Um, and at the time, I was involved with a group called Psychologists for Social Responsibility. And there was a huge effort from within that group from some psychologists, not many. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of Zionist influence inside that group. Um, who for a long time really struggled to educate, inform, and move the group to support BDS. And finally, that was achieved, and I got to be part of that, the tail end of achieving that. However, um, the American Psychological Association, for folks who are not aware, is basically the psychological warfare arm of the U.S. defense. It is a defense industry, um, and it is Zionist heavy. And so I was involved with APA for a while, and right now there's a lot of heat coming down toward the psychologists, and there has been a lot of harassment, just like in most academic spaces, in most professional spaces, where Zionism is king. They have made life very difficult and scary at times, for psychologists as well, who are themselves Palestinian, who have been outspoken in support of BDS, and especially lately, who have been outspoken against the genocide and calling for ceasefire, etc. So I've been paying a lot of attention to that. And it's been interesting how I think in the anti-war movement, I know there's not a lot of attention given to the APA. I think there's not a lot of information. I know I'm constantly trying to educate people on this and trying to organize um, a targeted response to the APA with protests, with social media campaigns, etc. But there's not a whole lot of investment from the peace movement in that direction, which I think is it's an issue that needs to be corrected, because we're really missing an opportunity to go after another weapons manufacturer. The American Psychological Association needs to be viewed as a weapons manufacturer. Psychologists are contracted at these more well-known weapons manufacturing facilities, companies, especially in relationship to the development of artificial intelligence and autonomous weapons. They're involved in human engineering, which is now called human factor engineering. There's a whole lot. There's a whole lot to that history. Um, so yeah, that's something that I'm still trying to help get folks to see, so that it can be added into a lot of the organizing efforts that are currently underway. And the fourth thing is um like what Shiloh was mentioning about, oh no, sorry. It's the Zone of Peace campaign that the Black Alliance for Peace has initiated. If folks are not familiar with what's happening always in the Western Hemisphere with regard to Latin America, um, and U.S. policy toward Latin America, the Monroe Doctrine, all the various implementations of that, the militarization of Latin America to serve the interests of U.S. imperialism, and so on and so forth. Um, the Giovanni, what's the CELAC puts out a statement, but I can't remember what the acronym means. for CELAC?
CELAC is it's a community of Latin American and Caribbean states.
Okay, thank you. So CELAC, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, consistently puts out a statement about creating the Americas as a zone of peace, calling for the Americas to become a zone of peace. It stops there at the statement. And so the Black Alliance for Peace took the initiative to start kind of like a coalition, I guess, but around really helping to encourage and organize grassroots efforts toward creating a zone of peace, starting with the people where the power is, like Shiloh was saying, rather than leaving it up to politicians and their own interests and like performative solidarity, et cetera, et cetera. Statements are great, but then we have to actually do things. So, so Black Alliance for Peace with the Zone of Peace campaign is actually doing something. And the org that I'm involved in, Solely Puerto Rico, we're one of the founding like orgs to not founding the campaign, but to join it and endorse it. And it's been really great to connect with others throughout Latin America, throughout the Americas, including North America, and talk about, how can we, as peoples, united with the goal, we all want to live in peace. And what does that look like in our daily lives? What can we do to achieve that? And there are 7 core demands to the campaign so far. To dismantle Southcom, shutting down all of the U.S. military bases in the region, ending U.S. NATO military exercises in the region, disbanding U.S.-sponsored state terrorist training facilities like WHINSEC, Western Hemispheric Institute for Security Cooperation, which some folks may know more as the School of the Americas, oppose military intervention in Haiti, return Guantanamo to Cuba, and to end all illegal sanctions and blockades of states in our region, to include all economic warfare, lawfare, and to recognize and support sovereignty. So I think this is a really important campaign. I think it's important that it is being led by the Black Alliance for Peace. Um, and I think the capacity for this campaign to really affect um, foundational change, not necessarily superficial change, but I think that the potential for foundational change to systems in our region that govern what happens in our region now. I think that this has the potential for upending those systems. So that leads me into what I'm hopeful for 2024 is that this campaign grows, that there's more involvement from people, that we're able to really connect the dots more intimately and in a more human way of how U.S. imperialism operates in our region, and that we can employ, a lot of the same principles that exist in organizing in the U.S. about like amplifying particular voices over others and so on and so forth. And that, to me, this gives me a lot of hope that those of us who are in the global South area of our region, who are the ones, not only us, obviously, but the nations trapped, the Turtle Island nations trapped inside the arbitrary borders of the U.S. But that, this will give us the opportunity to see each other, to humanize one another, to be able to reach each other in ways that imperialism tries to stop us from doing, and to really build our collective power more meaningfully and more tangibly, so that we can achieve those demands. I should also mention the objectives of the campaign. So there's 3. The first is to build a that's plural, a peoples-centered campaign that coordinates anti-imperialist, anti-war, and pro-peace organizations, political parties, labor and social justice orgs, as well as movements across our region to move our Americas toward building alternative institutions and centers of power. Number 2, strengthen an Americas-wide consciousness among the peoples of the region. And number three, establish peoples-centered Americas-wide coordinating structures that would facilitate the successful expulsion of the US, EU, NATO axis of domination from our region. So those are very big goals, but I think that they're achievable if we can organize ourselves well. So that brings me to the second thing that I'm hopeful for is that, particularly for folks in the US who, like Shiloh, you were mentioning the kind of like awakening that's happening in a more accelerated way now, that shredding of the veil. Um, I hope that that continues so that in such a way as to help people see that the electoral politic aspect of organizing is not where we need to be putting all of our attention. Um, because there are so many other uh, entry points. There are so many other like strategically valuable places that we need to be putting our energy. When you mentioned about like we can't boycott the weapons manufacturers because we're not buying them, we can boycott them by organizing the workers to remove their labor from those places, right? So in that way, we don't have the power as consumers, but we have that power as people. We have that power as people who are economically suppressed, oppressed, and repressed. Um, so yeah, and I think too, like I'm hopeful that the weaponization of identity politics by the imperial state is one of those parts of the veil that gets shredded because, like, if we turn a critical eye toward recent years, like the entire time that Trump was running in his first campaign, people were like full speed organizing against it because so many of us could see the fascism. We could see it. We were living it, and we knew what was coming down the pipes and we were doing everything we could to stop it in all of the ways that we knew how. And look where we are still, you know. So that's probably one of my biggest hopes for 2024 for the US in particular is that folks will see that we need to shift our tactics in how we organize ourselves and how we relate to each other, particularly folks who align more left, um, who may not yet be in a place. We have to be realistic about how things are in the US racially, the violence that's there, et cetera. It's going to be hard for folks to go into one of the weapons manufacturing places that is primarily employed by right wing thinking, by homophobic, transphobic, racist, white supremacist mindsets. That's going to be really challenging. And it's going to take a lot from us to go into those places and try to humanize those workers to reach the goal. But I hope that that's something that we can arrive at. And then the last thing, I hope that, like Jovanni, when you were talking about people are starting to boycott US products now, expanding the BDS, I definitely think that that should happen. I hope it happens sooner rather than later. And I really hope that, like, I'm so incredibly moved and encouraged by South Africa raising the issue of genocide to the ICC, and calling for Israel to be, US needs to be right up in there with them. And if they could be retroactively charged for all the war crimes, all of them, that would just be like the greatest gift. It's not going to happen like that, of course, but um, yeah, I hope that more countries will get a backbone, you know, and do the same thing. I hope that more countries will stop being so scared of the United States and scared of Israel and actually do the right thing instead of also like maintaining their complicity by preserving their own self-interest and their greed and whatnot. But that's what I hope for. Free Palestine, free Puerto Rico, free Turtle Island, free everywhere, US out of everywhere.
Awesome. Thank you, Monisha. Monisha, I got a couple questions to ask you. So the the plebiscite that you were talking about, that's the same plebiscite that AOC and Lydia, wasn't it Lydia Torres? That's the one that they're promoting here in Congress.
Yeah, and what's interesting is so there was an older one that they did, and both their names were on it, but on this one, I think because it's now in the
Sorry,
Senate,
it's Lydia Velasquez, right?
Nydia Velasquez, but I
Okay.
don't think AOC's name is on the Senate version of it because she's a representative, right? Not a senator. So yeah, I don't know if her name can be on it, but yeah, it's the same one.
Awesome. Also, I want to ask you about when you mentioned Duresco. Something came to mind also that early this year, there was circling of Ukraine troops being trained at the old Roosevelt Road base. Whatever came out of that.
So I haven't seen anything else. I live directly near there, so I hear all of the air traffic that goes in and out. I can see training exercises happening from time to time, but it doesn't seem like there's been any change to the frequency or type than what I've been used to, like, hearing and seeing. So I'm not sure. I don't know. It did raise quite a stink among Viacenses, obviously. For folks who are listening, Viacenses are people from the island of Vieques that the U.S. Um, militarized and used as a practice range for all but real war exercises for 60 something years. And we're still struggling with the UXO and all of the stuff. And so it did get discussed on social media. I'm not sure if anybody did press releases on that or nothing else came out about it to lead to more action on the part of the community. So it was just kind of hearsay anyway. Sources told the
So I got it from a news article from one of
yeah,
the
from Claridad, right?
yeah, no, was it Claridad? It was either Claridad or I think it was Claridad, yes. Yeah, that one or the one that's the Metro. Was the Metro the one that's in San Juan?
Yeah, I
One of the
didn't see
two.
that one. I'd only seen the one from Claridad,
Okay.
and in it they say that sources say, but there was nothing else to confirm it, and not that I doubt them at all. It's just that it was rumored. The sources were saying this could happen, not necessarily that it was going to happen, but that it was being talked about. So, yeah, our ears are still to the ground here, keeping an eye on what happens with that, and if there's anything that we see, we're definitely gonna raise hell.
Also, one other thing you mentioned about the zone of peace. I believe that was initiated by either Chavez. He was Chavez when he was in power. About the declaration of zone of peace. I think one of the initiatives that they were trying to do at the time was to end the last active conflict in South America, which was the conflict of the Colombian government against the Colombian guerrillas, where Chavez was acting as a mediator between the government and the FARC, and now Cuba is acting as a mediator between the Colombian government and the ELN, which is also another guerrilla, uh, militia in Colombia. What's funny about it is that both countries, because of their involvement in trying to bring those conflicts. I mean, the conflict between the Colombian government and the FARC is like the oldest active guerrilla conflict in the Western Hemisphere. I mean, it's been going on since the 50s, I believe, and and it came to a close a few years ago. But the ELN it's still active, and right now Cuba is acting as a mediator. They're meeting in Havana. But what's funny is because of those two countries acting to try to bring closure to those long conflicts, right? Both countries were designated as state sponsors of terrorists because of that. Um, and and uh, uh, and Cuba was added to the list of state sponsor of terrorism a country because of their involvement with the ELN and their involvement with the mediating between them and the Colombian government.
I was not aware of that specific connection. Thanks for telling me that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Very valuable. A lot of input that you put there. Thank you. Um, guess who's next? That's me, right? So yeah.
What's on your mind, Giovanni? Tell us everything.
So I've been taking notes on my phone all week actually dodging things here and there, and I just put them together. I put like the top 3 or 4 things together, right? And obviously a lot of things that happened in 2023. A lot of movement, like Shiloh mentioned earlier. Like, I mean, there was huge tectonic shifts going on. I think Lenin was the one who coined that there were decades that nothing happens, and there was days that decades happens, and that's what's happening. Uh, a lot of things moving, a lot of moving parts, a lot of things happening, around the world. Just so hard to keep up. So one of the things that inspired me in 2023 was the revolt in the Sahel against France. That's Sahel is the area of Central Africa. So most of those countries in the Sahel were part of, French colonialism. They were colonized by France for like over 100 years. But there were successive coups going on since 2021, 2, and 3. There was several coups where the president of the government that are, francophone or francophile governments were overthrown by nationalist governments, right? By revolutionary nationalist governments. Or not all, they didn't all had necessarily be a revolutionary nationalist government, but some of them were overthrown by governments that pretty much wanted to distance themselves from France, right? Um, so the countries that pretty much enacted coups or broke relations with France were pretty much Chad, Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Gabon. In 2023, it was Niger that overthrew the government on a coup and pretty much broke relations with France and told France to go home and send all their troops. Like, keep in mind that France had bases in all these countries, these other countries, right? And France pretty much controlled these countries' economy. And one of the things that and a lot of these countries are very rich in minerals, very rich in material and raw material, very rich in commodities and everything. But the people see very little of the wealth that's being extracted from this country, because most of this wealth goes to France, right, or other European countries. So that right there, caused revolts and people's revolts. And there's one person, which was very inspiring for a lot of people. His name is Captain Ibrahim Traore. He's from Burkina Faso, right? And I believe he was an army captain. I think he's like 32 years old, but he became like an incarnation of Thomas Sankara. Thomas Sankara was a revolutionary leader of that country, Burkina Faso. Also led a revolt against colonialism and neocolonialism, and was setting the country in the path towards liberation and self-sufficiency until he was killed in 87. So this person became, in the minds and the imaginations of his people, the reincarnation of Thomas Sankara, and he was became very popular. So yeah, so nevertheless, France, the US, and others, Britain, they tried to reverse what was happening in the Sahel. And there's this economic community of West Africa, ECOWAS is called. And this community of West Africa pretty much is a Western shield. It's like the OAE, it's like the OAF here in the United States, kind of, in not United States, but in the US, in the Western Hemisphere. But this is mostly focused on economic issues, but also in political issues in the West countries. But anyway, they were threatening an invasion, a muster-up invasion to against Niger. They imposed sanctions on Niger. They gave Niger a deadline that if they don't reconstitute the president that was overthrown by this date, that they were going to intervene militarily. France was supporting, US was supporting, and everything. But they weren't able to do that because the other countries that I mentioned before, Chad, Guinea, Mali, threatened ECOWAS that if they get themselves involved militarily into Nigeria, they will come into they will come to support Nigeria, and then there will pretty much be a declaration of war against them as well. So it was kind of like a one for all and all for one type of thing, so ECOWAS kind of backed away. But yeah, so that was inspiring. That was inspiring, seeing that these countries, stood up to Western economic power and military power. They consolidated amongst themselves, and they support each other, and and these powers couldn't do anything about it, and they're right now tracking. Another thing that also that I'm tracking and also inspired me was the BRICS summit in South Africa. This was the 15th BRICS summit. And for all you don't know what BRICS stands for, it means it's an economic relationship between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Hence the acronym BRICS. It's funny because the name, they didn't give themselves that name. The name that the was one of those stock firms that gave him that name early about 15 years ago. I forgot which stock firm. It's an American stock firm actually. They gave him that name because of the relationship they were coming together, right? And pretty much the founders of this economic relationship was, Brazil, Russia, and China. Then India got involved, and then South Africa was the last one. But in this summit that happened in August 2023, they announced 6 new members to add the BRICS. So now it's called BRICS Plus, right? And the 6 new members is Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Argentina, Ethiopia, and the UAE. Most of the country, Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE and Ethiopia are countries that are heavy on petroleum, right? So that right there, pretty much having that is having consolidated that power, that petroleum power within this organization, pretty much make the BRICS economically higher than the G7. For those who don't know who the G7, pretty much the great 7 countries, the 7 wealthiest countries in the world, the UK, US, France, Germany, Japan, and 2 others makes the G7s, but the BRICS surpass them in economic activities now. Those countries, which, I thought that was inspiring that, that it's an organization that is not centered in the West, that is centered elsewhere in the rest, and that they have this cooperation with each other. And it was kind of inspiring. And then also opening up to other global majority countries to come in and whatnot, and have this economic cooperation with each other. So the 6 countries will become officially members in January 2024. However, with the election of Javier what's his last name? Milei in Argentina, he's pretty much a very extreme libertarian. He's pretty much in with the IMF. He wants to dollarize the economy. He wants to enact austerity back in Argentina. He wants to break relations with Brazil, China, and Russia, etc. And then during his election campaign, he pretty much pledged allegiance to the United States and Israel. So he pretty much formally submitted the letter to Lula in Brazil, saying that Argentina will be withdrawn from the BRICS. So now instead of 6 countries, now it's 5 countries. But yeah, so that was inspiring for me. The new trade routes that's happening, and then the linking between the BRICS, China's BRI, which is the Belt and Road Initiative, and the Central Asian Economic Union, which is made up of former Soviet countries in Central Asia. This economic coalition with each other, right? That that's kind of inspiring as well, because now you see the world, the globe, kind of moving away from what was called the core being central, North Atlantic, Canada, United States, and Western Europe, moving away from the core, from the central, and pretty much doing business with each other, and pretty much by doing so, affirming their sovereignty, affirming their own development without being managed from the West. Which I think that is very, uh, inspiring. Also, the de-dollarization that's happening as well, which means that currently the countries, when they do business with each other, they have to do business with they do commerce with each other with dollars. So a lot of countries have to manage to have dollar reserves, and then that's how they purchase goods in the global market with dollars. But the only country that print dollars is the United States. No other countries do that, right? So they have to sell the commodities in dollars and buy the goods in dollars and everything. So now, with all this economic activity that's going on with all these countries, right now, these and all these economic allegiances and all this economic relations that's happening. Now countries are starting to bypass the dollar and having bilateral relations, buying with their own currencies or other currencies, etc. Right, which is a good thing. One of the things that was funny, Marco Rubio, the senator in February in Florida, he complained about the de-dollarization that's happening because his word is it's going to be harder to sanction countries. So if countries does not use dollars, it'll be harder to sanction them. Right now, the reason sanctions is so effective on countries because countries need to use dollars to get goods, and then by denying them dollars, it kind of makes them hard to buy things in the market, right? So if countries are doing business with each other, not using the dollars, right? So it's kind of harder in Marco Rubio's word, it's harder to sanction them. Um, Third thing that caught my attention and that I'm following is the failure of the Ukraine counteroffensive, which was propped up to be this big thing that was supposed to happen in the spring of 2023, and then got pushed back to the summer. This was supposed to break the back of the Russian army. The Ukrainian was supposed to reach was the coast by the end of the summer. They were supposed to be in Crimea, having beach parties and everything because they did a whole theatrical commercial on it. All this promotion, how successful this is going to be. They weren't able to. They hit pretty much a Russian wall, and the West were just throwing uh, armament after armament, and the Western countries were kind of depleting their shells and the armaments and all the weaponry that was sending it to Ukraine, and they were all just being destroyed one after the other. You see countries like Germany, for example, they use all their last reserves. You see uh, complaining about they're using all their reserves and everything to send to Ukraine, and nothing was happening. There weren't any goods. So now what's happening now that Ukraine kind of, if you don't notice, kind of left the main people ain't talking about Ukraine no more. It's not kind of hard talking about it now. The Ukrainian president Zelensky is just pretty much going around the world, kind of begging for more money because it has been a failure. I mean, this country was pretty much pushed into this war. I mean, this year as well was the 10th anniversary of the war in Ukraine, which is it happened 10 years ago with the coup in 2014, and when they started attacking the Russian speaking populations within Ukraine and Eastern Ukraine, etc. Right, and then with the intervention of Russia, a little almost 2 years ago now, it kind of escalated, intensified after that. But yeah, and pretty much were pushed by NATO and the and Western European countries to pretty much commit suicide. Pretty much that's what happened. Because they're self-inflicted injuries. They lost a huge amount of the population. We got millions of people that 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 went to Russia. Millions of people that went to Western Europe. Hundreds of thousands of people killed in the battlefield. So this country pretty much is broken into pieces because they were used as cannon fodder to hurt Russia. In the words of Hillary Clinton, they were trying to get the Afghan trap on Russia using Ukraine, and it failed. Um, yeah, and lastly, things that I'm tracking, is what's happening in Palestine. obviously that has impacted me, impacted a whole lot of people. Like Shiloh said earlier, it's happening broad daylight. People are anybody with a smartphone can see what's happening, and we're footing the bill. Just thinking in tomorrow, if the U.S. just stop um, enabling it and sending billions of dollars to Israel. Just this week, I believe they pushed another packet of $100 billion worth of ammunitions and armament to Israel here in the United States Congress. I think they bypassed Congress. Actually, they bypassed Congress and just send it to them, and that's on top of the $4 billion that the United States sends to Israel a year to sustain them, etc. And every time other countries, every time they convene a session at the UN to try to sanction Israel, try to do some type of resolution against Israel, the U.S. and about three other countries, small countries like Micronesia and Palau, for example, and Israel veto it, or U.S. veto it. They won't let it happen. We'll let it pass it. Um, Egypt, which is a neighboring country, right on the border with Gaza, has to ask permission to Israel and the U.S. before sending in aid to Gaza. Which is huge humiliation to the to the Arab nations. Egypt is the most populous country in the Arab world, has the largest military in the Arab world, yet they have to ask permission to send aid into Gaza, which is very troubling, very humiliating to the Arab people. Sentiments is on the right place. The issue in Palestine is in the hearts of every Arab person. Yet these heads of states, they're totally captured uh, by the West, by the U.S., by Israel, and they seem to be unwilling to do anything, you know, uh, unless given permission to do so. So yeah, those are the four things that I've been tracking, four things that I'm looking into and following. Things I'm looking forward to is the end of the Ukraine war, which is also going to be which also is already, the war is lost already. Uh, People in Congress, people in the West are pretty much turning away from Ukraine because it's already lost cause. NATO has been defeated again. They got defeated in 2021 in Afghanistan. They're being defeated again in Ukraine. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the end of this carnage that's happening in Ukraine that has cost a lot of hundreds of thousands of lives, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians, hundreds of thousands of Russian lives, and others, to come to an end, to come to a close. Second thing I'm looking forward to is the end of the Zionist apartheid state of Israel. If you notice that recently in Congress, they passed a resolution equating Zionism to anti-Semitism. And I think every congressperson, it was a bipartisan thing, every congressperson voted for it. But one Republican Congress voted against it. And Rashida Tlaib, she voted present, but everybody else voted for it, which is wrong. Zionism is not equivalent to anti-Semitism. Zionism is an ideology that was created in Europe, is Jewish supremacy, Jewish nationalism, which is racialized Judaism, which is a religion. So that's what Zionist is, and the state of Israel is a Zionist, enacting a Zionist policy, an apartheid policy, but it's not the same as anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism being tied to language, tied to a people of a region, which is people of the Middle East, people in what we call West Asia, or or Semitic people, including Arab, Semitic people, including Palestinians, or Semitic people. So yeah, so that looking forward to the end of this state that was created by the UN, was first created by Britain, by the UK. It was started off by UK, but was actually created by the UN in 1948. and without the input of the people that were already living there, which is the Palestinians, and that's the origin of this conflict. It's not religion. It's not hatred towards Jews. Is the ethnic cleansing, is the displacement, is the people by immigrants from Europe claiming that the land is theirs. Um, so yeah, I mean, if you look back at South Africa, for example, apartheid South Africa doesn't exist anymore. People, you study South Africa, the country exists, but apartheid South Africa doesn't exist anymore. It's in the history books. Yeah, and that's what I'm looking forward to um, next year, that the apartheid Zionist state of Israel is in the history book, and then we look forward to a more inclusive, more peaceful, uh, state in that area. And then further, lastly, I'm looking forward to the furthering of the multi-polar world, which is forming as we speak. Just like Shiloh mentioned earlier, the shift that's happening is moving towards a world where the West is not centered, but there are multiple centers around the world. You know, what I would like to see instead of a multipolar is a plural world, which was coined by Chavez and Evo Morales, which means a world that with no centers of power. A world where where states are more in cooperative mode than competitive mode, and that is my and that's my story, and that's what I'm sticking with. But
May it be so. May it be so. Burn it all down. It sounds like you're just done with all of it. The thing that's listening to both you and Monisha. The thing that keeps just echoing in my head is, with all this Monisha talking about all the systems and structures that are collapsing in Puerto Rico, and just all the war and violence happening at the behest of the U.S. and different empires. Like, what is giving you hope? What's keeping you in the fight and not, like Monisha said, putting your head in the sand? What gives you hope for 2024?
I mean, just like you had mentioned earlier, I mean, we have to have revolutionary hope. Just like you mentioned earlier, not having hope is not an option. We need revolutionary hope. We need to be aware of what's happening and take part in whatever our capacity is to take part in. Here in San Antonio, for example, we've been doing our part with the Palestinian, ethnic cleansing that's happening now. Been going to the community has been mobilized here. We've been going to here in San Antonio. We have City Hall. It's something that's called Citizen to be Heard, which is on Wednesday, which is anyone can go to the City Hall and present their comments or present problems. And the mayor is there, and then the city council persons are there as well, and everything. And then you get like 3 minutes to three uninterrupted minutes to present your case, present your what you have to say. So ever since this conflict has started, the community here in San Antonio, we've been going every Wednesday. We've been going down to City Hall, and pretty much people after people, right, giving their testimonies on what's happening in Israel. I know that we're a city, and you say that, well, your city, that's something with foreign policy. That city doesn't have nothing to do with it. But San Antonio is part of this program called city friendship cities. So we have several friendship cities, and then they have and this program at Friendship City. One of the cities that we're friends with is Tel Aviv. We're demanding that our city drops, Tel Aviv as one of the friendship cities. Apparently the city of San Antonio has given Israel about $19 million, right? $19 million. So we're demanding for our mayor to drop the Tel Aviv as a friendship city, which is interesting because he wrote the first week that we started going, um, and like I said, we were filling city halls, the media was there, and they were, they were interviewing people on the spot and everything. And he put out a statement saying that he's not going to drop it because um, it has nothing to do with foreign policy and friendship. That's what the world needs is friendship. Just by just give us like this little milk toast. You know, uh, s- you know, statement, little, yeah, little toast statement there, right? Saying that people need to talk and peace, is through dialogue and blah blah. We need cooperation, we need friendship, etc. Right? However, Houston, and you said it has nothing to do with foreign policy. But Houston, for example, is also a friendship city, and they had a friendship city relationship with the Russian country, with the Russian city. And as soon as the Russian intervention started, right, they dropped that like it was hot potato. They just dropped it. So they can't tell us that San Antonio can't do the same. you know, they're choosing not to do it. That's the thing. Apparently, they're forcing a vote here in San Antonio for next year for the 8th or 9th of January. People are asked to go to City Hall, flood City Hall again, and pretty much push the council members, to this vote to drop Tel Aviv off the Friendship City list of San Antonio. So things like that. Take part in whatever you can take part in. Know that it could be overwhelming. You might feel powerless, watching the news. You might feel all other people just look the other way, just like nothing is happening. Like, we're in the holiday season, people out there shopping, like nothing is happening. It doesn't concern them and it's not affecting them in any way. So yeah, they don't think about it. But yeah, keep talking about it. It's another thing that I was seeing in social media that the more people flood social media with things about Palestine, the harder it is to shadow ban and the harder it is to uh to close people's account or not close it. What they've been doing, they're suspending people. It's hard to suspend people because there's so many people putting things about Palestine, which is something that I think either you said it or Monisha said it uh that the veil is coming out, people are seeing it, which is something that we didn't see like 15 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago. The only narrative that we'll get every time Israel will get on this killing spree, the only narrative that we'll get was the narrative from Israel. But now they don't control the narrative anymore. People are pretty much pushing back with the counter narrative of what's happening, and yeah. So things like that give me revolutionary hope.
Um, Before I say what gives me hope, I want to call myself out because I had intended to talk about the Congo as well, um, and I did not. I got lost in the sauce, and I bring that up related to this because of how um, the struggle for the liberation of Palestine and the genocide that's happening is part of what has brought light to what's happening in Congo, the genocide there, in Israel and US involvement there, as well as the huge contradiction that it's the very technology that we're using to expose the genocide against Palestinians that is the result of the genocide against Congolese peoples. I have a lot of feelings about that contradiction, and I don't know what the answer is to that. But I'm thankful that now at least there's it's being talked about more, um, and we can become more aware. And it makes me think about what does give me hope um, is with mutual aid initiatives, with food sovereignty movements, with the things that are doing like what the Zone of Peace campaign talks about, and like creating new structures, creating new systems for us to survive and thrive with and relate to each other through, so that we stop being unwitting and or unwilling participants in these genocides just by way of the nature of consumerism. Um, And I'm hopeful that the more Congo gets talked about, the more raw that contradiction becomes for people, and we start to take more responsibility in that way, you know. I don't think we have an answer to that right now because we need our technology to do the work that we're doing. We need to be able to communicate with each other. And now it's like every time I pick up my phone, which is constantly now, I'm like constantly checking TikTok, Instagram, etc. Um, I feel it. I'm like thinking of the hands and the bodies, the eyes, the souls, the spirits, the lives of the people in Congo that are the reason why this phone's even in my hand to to begin with. Um, so yeah, I guess in a weird way, I'm trying to say that the co- the what's the word I'm looking for, Giovanni? You know it, like the exacerbation of the contradiction there of us being forced to look at all of these things um is going to force us to change our way of life. And I see the people who are already working toward that and have been working toward that for years through farming, through mutual aid work, um, through, trying to reduce our dependency on globalization and on these very systems that oppress us. So yeah, that's where my hope lies. And that's why even though oftentimes I get very frustrated and feel hopeless and feel despair and feel just like frozen. Um, I look to those folks w- because they're constantly doing the thing. They're growing food. They're teaching us, to me, they're an example of what we should be doing by, like, if I could go back really quick to what I was saying about balancing our energies and maybe using them less on electoral politics and more on other things. Like, that's some of the other things that was in my mind when I was saying that. Like, we need to be creating mutual aid systems to sustain general strikes, to effectively remove ourselves from the equation of these oppressive systems once and for all. And if we're always focusing on electoral politics, we're not giving our time and energy toward the creation of a new society. We're maintaining the old one. Um, so yeah, food sovereignty. you know, that's where my hope really lies, as well as in the resistance of people, like the people's just sheer will to resist and survive. Um, I think that to me is an incredible example. You know, that a lot of us who exist within the first world, who benefit from these people's will to survive, we need to take a lesson from them in that way and be willing to suffer and be willing to struggle, with less. Um, and I see people willing to do that. So, yeah. What about you, Shiloh?
Uh, yeah, what gives me hope? Um, a few things, big and small. Um, small being uh small in stature, big in heart. Like my 4-year-old gives me a lot of hope. Um, my partner and I are very open and honest with them around, to their level, like what's going on in the world and what's going on in Palestine. And every day they ask me, are they still fighting in Palestine? So if they can wake up hopeful that it stopped, I can wake up hopeful as well. Um, I think the watching Yemen just take matters into their own hands and block the Red Sea, like that's a big way of exerting people power, of, like, you know stopping the chain, um the chain of weapons and the flow of weapons, um and stopping the consumerism in Israel. And I can see, like, yeah, like we were talking about, the different actions of people power, of, like, um removing yourself through the BDS movement, removing your own consumerism and your own flow of money. And then also, if you can't, or you can remove your consumerism, and then you can also remove your labor. And like you're saying, Monisha, like if we're gonna ask people to remove their labor from the equation, then we have to have systems that support them, so that people aren't left out on their own, because we're still living under capitalism, so you have to labor to live. Um, so that gives me hope. And then also this, just in the last, I think, week, maybe 10 days or so, the first public conscientious objector, Tal Mitnick, um, a teenager in Israel who was objecting to conscription into the Israeli army. Um, that gives me hope if, maybe possibly more people feeling emboldened to do that and speak out. Um, yeah, I think a lot of the youth give me hope always. So that's what's giving me hope right now. And hopefully we can all carry that into 2024.
Speaking on Israel and the genocide they're committing in broad daylight, in front of cameras, it's astonishing because it's the first time. I mean, this is not the first ethnic cleansing, first genocide that's ever happened in human history. But it's the first time it's actually happening in broad daylight in front of cameras and people actually seeing it in live, while it's happening, usually, and something else that, they seem to not get held accountable either, uh, and that's more astonishing. I mean, it's a huge slap in the face of humanity and whatever institutions and whatever values people claim that. My daughter, she wanted me to recommend a couple of movies, a few movies actually, right? To if you're new to if you want to know more of Palestine through Palestinians, through the eyes of Palestinians, and their experience and what they're living. Good movie is Farha. Farha, I watched Farha. I recommend it. You guys watch Farha as well, right? That was a pretty good movie, right? Uh, it takes place when the Nakba happened in 1948 to a girl and her family. What happened when the Israeli militias started showing up at people's doors and just started pretty much um, um, was start depopulating areas uh, in Palestine. There's another one called Born in Gaza, which is a documentary. There's one called Omar. Another one is Habibi. Another one is 200 meters. Another one is The Present, 3,000 Nights, Salt of the Sea, Salt of this Sea, The Crossing, Pomegranates and Myrrh, Eyes of a Thief. And all those movies you can find on Netflix. There's another movie that we actually screened here in San Antonio called Five Broken Cameras, which is pretty good. Just about a man who's documenting the occupation in his neighborhood, and each time his camera get broken, so he needs to get a new camera. He fixes it and to take pictures of the abuses happening in his neighborhood and by the Israeli occupation forces. So I think this is a good place to wrap up for the night. Um, I mean, I have mixed feelings about 2023. I don't know about you guys. I mean, there are ups and downs. Uh, notice I didn't notice. Notice I the points that I like. I started with things that I thought was positive, and then with down note. Um, Obviously, the tragedy that we're all witnessing. Genocide, ethnic cleansing right before our eyes. The people doing it, with impunity, while we here in the U.S. foot the bill. I mean, it's a slap in the face, like I said, to everyone, to humanity, to anyone who ever told us uh, that that we stand for human rights, for truth, for democracy, for this and that. It's just a big humiliation, big snap, right? But we must have revolutionary optimism. We need to go forward. it needs to go push. We need to intervene whenever we can. We need to take action whenever we can. We can't put our hand in the sand, like Monisha said, or look the other way, or just act like nothing's happening. We need to be protagonists in this world. We need to be not just spectators, but protagonists. Um, any last comments before we depart?
Y'all give me hope too.
Oh, you
Yeah.
too.
Same. Just like, yeah, staying in community and, keeping those heart to heart connections that we have really, yeah, just keep your own humanity. The psychopaths in power lost theirs years ago, but we have to keep our own humanity, and we do that through caring about one another. Yeah.
What
Interesting.
Shiloh said.
Interesting. Someone told me a story over a weekend or last weekend, um, and we're talking about the same note, and it's about this elderly person that was sitting, with a sign about, protesting wars and mobilization and everything. He was an elderly person, right? And he was the only person standing. He'll on a daily basis. He'll stand in the same spot with the same signs, and the same sign about ending wars and ending the other wars and what. Um, and someone stopped them and asked him, why you here day in day out, every day with the same sign, and people just walk past you and they don't pay you any mind, you're not changing anything. Why are you still doing it? And his answer was, I don't do it to change people. I do it so people won't change me. You know, that was profound, I thought. But well, yeah. Thank you all for accompanying me tonight. Thank the listeners. Thank you, listener, for staying with us. Throughout 2023. Hope to see you again in 2024. Please share us. Please share us with your friends. Help our community here grow. Help our capacity grow. We have multiple places where you can listen to us. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find us. You can find us on YouTube. We have an Instagram. Do we have Instagram? I'm not sure, but no, we have a Telegram page as well. Please sign up. Help us grow in next coming year. And here we try to, keep it real. Thank you, and take care, everybody.
Money is tight these days for everyone. Penny pinching to make it through the month often doesn't give people the funds to contribute to a creator they support. So we consider it the highest honor that folks help us fund the podcast in any dollar amount they're able. Patreons is the main place to do that. In addition, any support we receive makes sure we can continue to provide our main episodes free for everyone. And for supporters who can donate $10 a month or more, they will be listed right here as an honorary producer, like these fine folks. Fahim's Everyone Dream, Eric Phillips, Paul Appel, Julie Dupree, Thomas Benson, Janet Hansen, Ren Jacob, Scott Spalding, Spooky Tooth, and Helgeberg. However, if Patreon isn't your style, you can contribute directly through PayPal at paypal.me/Fortress on a Hill. Or please check out our store on Spreadshirt for some great Fortress merch. We're on Twitter and Facebook.com/Fortress on a Hill. You can find our full collection of episodes at www.fortressonahill.com. Skepticism is one's best armor. Never forget it. We'll see you next time.